Hi everybody, Matthew Turnage here. Of course, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and that's usually what we talk about here on the channel. But every now and then I like to touch on some of my other favorite bands, and I actually got a request recently from a viewer who asked me to rank all of Led Zeppelin's albums. And I'm sorry I can't credit you by name. The viewer's name in the comments was in a alphabet that I'm not familiar with. So forgive me for not saying your name, but hopefully you'll catch this. And we'll get into the rankings now. Zeppelin is a band that I don't have all their albums on vinyl, just the first two. I bought their full catalog in one go around 2000 or so in this complete recordings box. So I'll be showing you some CDs, but it's a little bit different packaging if you're not familiar with this box than what you might be used to. It's the albums are housed in booklets or books like this. You see little small hardcovers with two albums on each one, and like in a flip book format with the artwork inside, and then as you flip the other way you see the other album's artwork. So it may look a little bit different to what you're used to as I show the albums, but let's go through and rank them. All right. Now, actually, to prepare for this, I should also say I listened to all of Zeppelin's albums all the way through for the first time in a long time. If your classic rock station is like the one where I live, they play Zeppelin all the time, and I'd kind of gone through a bit of a burnout. And, maybe every now and then I might get in the mood for a particular song and would listen to it. As far as listening to all the albums all the way through, I had not done it in a long time. So it's fun to get back into it because they do have a great catalog. So we're going to start at number 9, of course, is going to be Coda. Actually, in re-listening this time, I enjoyed it more than I think I ever have. That was always the album, if I would listen to all the albums, that I had a hard time getting all the way through. I didn't have that problem this time. I found it enjoyable, but still, it's compared to the rest of their catalog, it is pretty weak. You do have a couple of good songs. I like Darlene a lot. Bonzo's Montreux is cool. We're Gonna Groove. Those are all pretty good songs, but it's most of these songs were songs that were recorded during the In Through the Outdoor period, or some a bit earlier, that didn't make the cut, and I think there's a reason for that. I mean, they're okay, but they're not great. So number 9 will be Coda. And then number 8, In Through the Outdoor. Now, In Through the Outdoor has a couple of absolute Led Zeppelin classics on it. You've got In the Evening, which is a killer opener. I love that song a lot. And of course, you've also got All My Love, which was just a great song, and that's certainly one of the radio staples that you hear a lot. Fool in the Rain gets a lot of radio play. To me, that song is just kind of okay. Hot Dog is kind of fun, but I'm Gonna Crawl is okay, but it's not a great album. So good tracks, good album. It's just that it doesn't measure up to the quality of the first 6 especially. So In Through the Outdoor at number 8. Number 7 will be Presence. Presence is an album, it's actually somewhat similar, my opinion of it is somewhat similar to In Through the Outdoor, in that you've got a couple of really outstanding tracks, all-time classics on this album. It's going to be Achilles' Last Stand and Nobody's Fault But Mine. Nobody's Fault But Mine is actually probably one of my all-time favorite Led Zeppelin songs. I just love that riff. And the rest of the songs are good, but not great. Candy Store Rock is pretty good. For Your Life. It's a solid album. I don't want to skip any tracks as I'm listening to it, but again, as a whole work, it's not going to measure up to what they did for me in the first 6 albums. And actually, Presence and In Through the Outdoor, they, to me, these 2 albums, pretty comparable in quality. What tipped me to put Presence a little bit ahead, probably my favorite song on In Through the Outdoor is going to be In the Evening. My favorite on Presence is going to be Nobody's Fault But Mine. And between those 2, I think Nobody's Fault But Mine is the better track. So, and probably primarily because of that, I asked myself the question, okay, if I'm going to just reach for one of these albums just because I'm in the mood for some Zeppelin, which one am I more likely to reach for? And it's going to be Presence. So, Presence in at number 7. Now, these first 6 albums are all amazing. Great all the way through, and really these rankings could shift a lot, depending on my mood. So if one of these is a bit lower than you think, don't interpret that to mean that I think it's not a good album. But number 6 is going to be Led Zeppelin 3. This is an album, I remember over the years I've read some people that didn't really get into it as much. It seems like some of the contemporary reviews may not have been that strong. I actually do think it's really good. There are other people I know who absolutely love it. Immigrant Song, of course, is one of their all-time best. Gallows Pole is a favorite of mine. Out on the Tiles I love. Bronny R. Stomp I like. There's a ton of good songs on this one. It doesn't quite stack up to some of these that are ahead of it for me, but it's an album that I do love putting in and listening to. Not a bad song on here. Led Zeppelin 3 coming in at number 5. All right, so coming in at number 6, now coming in at number 5, is going to be the debut album, Led Zeppelin. This is one of the all-time great debuts by any band. So many classic songs. Good Times, Bad Times is one of my favorite opening tracks from them. I love that song. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Dazed and Confused. I mean, every song on here is great. Of course, Communication Breakdown. It's really amazing what this band pulled off from the debut. Of course, these are, experienced musicians, or at least Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were. Jimmy Page certainly, coming into this album, was able to take what he had sort of begun building in the last days of the Yardbirds and let's be honest, take some inspiration from the Jeff Beck group. I think the format of this debut does have some similarities in how Jeff Beck's Truth was put together, at least in my opinion. But nevertheless, Page was able to take those influences and all that stuff and build it into something even better and greater. And so consequently, you ended up with a staggering debut, and it's no wonder that Led Zeppelin just exploded right out of the gate with an album like that. So number 5, Led Zeppelin. Number 4 be Led Zeppelin 2. They had such an amazing debut, and of course it's sort of a cliche oftentimes, the sophomore slump. A band, will put everything into such a great debut album and then they can't quite measure up with the second album. Absolutely not the case with Led Zeppelin 2. Whole Lot of Love is one of the greatest Zeppelin riffs of all time. Then you've got Heartbreaker and Livin' Lovin' made such a great 1-2 punch to kick off the second side. And every song on here is great. Ramble On, What Is and What Should Never Be is another favorite of mine. Of course, Moby Dick, great instrumental. Bring It On Home closes out the album in fine form. Led Zeppelin 2 in at number 4. This album certainly could have gone higher on my list. Like I said, it all depends on the mood I'm in, I guess, and on this latest listen through, that's where it comes in. And these top three especially could really move back and forth for me. I really had a hard time figuring out the ranking on these three, but and I know it's shifted over time. Next up at number 3, this is an album that at times has been at number 1 for me, and that's going to be Houses of the Holy. Now, this was an album that early on I was not quite as high on as I came to be later, and the reason why was, like, when I first heard this song, when I was a teenager, I thought The Song Remains the Same was okay. The Rain song didn't really do a whole lot for me. But then Over the Hills and Far Away was always one of my absolute favorite Led Zeppelin songs, maybe my number 1 favorite Led Zeppelin song. And from that point on, I love the rest of the album. The Crunge is fun. Dancing Days, Jamaica, another great fun song. No Quarter is epic. And The Ocean is another one of my all-time favorite Zeppelin songs. And then at some point along the way, maybe it's around the time I bought this box set, I don't remember, but all of a sudden something clicked for me on those first 2 tracks, especially The Song Remains the Same, where I just love those. And so for a while there, like I said, I would have ranked this at number 1. I still, if you catch me in 2 months and I listen through to these again, maybe I'll come out and say House of the Holy is number 1. But on this listen through, there are 2 others that just really I was digging just a little bit more, enough to rank them a little bit higher. So number 3, Houses of the Holy, and now number 2 be Led Zeppelin 4, or as it's usually called, Led Zeppelin 4. It's sometimes referred to as Untitled. Technically, its title is, as it's listed on the side, those 4 symbols. But whatever you want to call this album, it is a monster. Almost every track gets played on classic rock radio, and certainly deservedly so. Black Dog is another great album opener from them. Rock and Roll, I love the energy of that track and the riff. The Battle of Evermore is epic. Of course, the song that everybody associates most with Led Zeppelin is on this album, Stairway to Heaven. And it's a great song, but actually for me, out of the 8 songs, it's probably like my 7th favorite. That's how much I think this album is just packed with good songs. Going to California is also another good one that I just really love. Misty Mountain Hop. They're all good, like I said. But probably my favorite is When the Levee Breaks. That drum sound that Bonzo has on that one is just killer, and there's such a groove on that one. Bonham and John Paul Jones really lock into a groove, and the guitar is over it. That slide guitar is just amazing, mind-blowing stuff. Led Zeppelin 4 in at number 2, and then number 1 for me, Led Zeppelin wise, it's going to be Physical Graffiti. Classic double album. This album has so much good stuff on it. The first disc is especially just, it's perfect. Custard Pie, great opener. The Rover. In My Time of Dying, this is another one that would be right at the very top of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs, along with Over the Hills and Far Away. It's just such a great blues jam. Again, great slide guitar work from Jimmy Page, great groove from Jones and Bonham, and really amazing vocals from Robert Plant, some of his best singing, I think. It's just, that song is a monster. And then you follow it up with Houses of the Holy, another great song. Trampled Underfoot, it's a classic, and Kashmir. It doesn't get any more epic than that. And then the second disc has so much good stuff. In the Light is a great opener on that one. Bron Noir is one of my favorite instrumentals. I love that song. Night Flight is another one that I like. So many good ones. Sick Again closes out the album. They're all really good on this one. So right now I have to say number 1 album from Led Zeppelin for me, Physical Graffiti. So there are my rankings. Led Zeppelin's albums from my least favorite to my favorite. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.